Hello and welcome. I'm your host Chanakshi Chakravarti from Nuremberg, Messe, India. And if you've been following us, you know we've been speaking to industry experts and leaders, helping us deep dive into their respective area of work to understand what is it that they really do, and something that has been a great learning for us over the last few months. Ahead of Asia's broadcasting and infotainment show, where we discuss all things related to the broadcast and infotainment industry, where technology is at its best display, new innovation and cutting-edge technology is on display. We are here today joined by one such industry leader, one expert that, if I may add, I have had the pleasure to work with and learn from, Ms. Suparna Singh, who was the former president of the NDTV Group and currently the co-founder and CEO at Frammer AI. I'm so happy to be joined by her because today I will get to learn so much more from her on an entirely new and a different topic, something such as AI. Suparna, thank you so much for doing this, taking the time out. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
So lovely to see you, Shanakti, in a different studio, not our old studio, but lovely to reconnect with.
Thank you so much. I want to begin by asking you the very first and basic question, the advent of Frammer. How did it all happen? Was it over a cup of coffee?
It was nearly over a cup of coffee, actually. So at NDTV, we used to, we prided ourselves on being very tech forward. And we knew that there was this need for a product that would magically, like a magic wand, take long-form content, what we think of as television content, and convert it into short-form content for digital media. You remember that NDTV was a huge digital leader, and our traffic and our business was very heavily reliant on what we were putting out on social media. And one of the restrictions that we used to hit day in and day out was, while we were producing for this screen, meaning the television screen, all the consumption was on this screen, the phone, right? And the process of converting broadcast content into digital content was very, very onerous. It required a lot of people to come together from nearly 6 or 7 different departments. So that meant each team had to be able to spare that kind of resource, right? And it would take time. So let's say a half-hour show, to cull highlights from it and post them on social media would take nearly 2 hours maybe, and a total of about 7 people. So the problem then was that at a time when all your eyeballs had moved to digital platforms, we were actually picking and choosing what we could in fact release on digital media. The idea, should be to be able to do that at scale. All your content should move from broadcast to digital. And the other thing is, even within digital media, right, there has been this sort of shift in audience from regular video to very short form video. So what we wanted was, this kind of magical solution that would be able to condense content without losing editorial accuracy, without losing integrity, and become highly engaging short form content. And we knew we were not the only ones. So we were in talks with publishers of all kinds, and everybody had the same requirement. So that was really where we began thinking about it. And then my 2 co-founders and I, and they were part of the NDTV team as well, we were chatting about it one day, and then our CTO at the time said, we could use AI to do this. And I said, could we? And then literally within maybe a 20-minute discussion, we said, oh, if we had to, this is how we would do it. And that's where, the idea basically was born.
Well, like they say, a lot can happen over a cup of coffee. And I'm sure there was a lot brewing back then. You've come a long way. It's been about a year, I think. But we'll talk a little bit more about AI a little into the conversation. But I also have to mention that for you, it's been over 2 decades in this industry with such a vast experience in broadcast and television broadcast news. How have you really seen, or what are the transitions that you've seen taking place from tapes to mobile journalism that I have been, witness to, and now AI? We're talking AI. Yeah. So take us through that.
So I think, in the beginning, obviously, everything was heavily manual, right? And that restricted the speed at which one could report news, and also the breadth of the news one could report, because one had to pick and choose which areas to cover, and it was expensive. And everything was on tape, like you mentioned. So, archiving content, I remember there used to be these racks and long shelves full of, our most precious material, which was our archive content. And then, of course, came digital media and the digitization of media, right? And that changed things and brought us so much speed. Mobile journalism, which you referred to, meant that, reporters could shoot with what is lying in front of you, a little phone. And it meant we could send reporters very fast and with far smaller budgets. And as you know, news is always up against the pressure of revenue. So mobile journalism allowed us to have many, many more boots on the ground and to get content from a far more diverse section of places.
Right.
And then now comes AI, which basically, I think in some ways rides the wave of social media and internet development, right? At least in the space that we operate in. Because what it allows us to do, one of the things is, of course, create content of all kinds at scale.
Right.
Now, there's also generative AI, which is basically taking just text and delivering video against it. So you just write a text story and, AI will go out and scour the internet for footage or photographs to match that script and really create a video package for you. So I think this change is so dramatic and it is completely upending the industry, but hopefully in a really good way. Because, like I said, what it allows for is a much more diverse reportage, which is so essential considering how polarized politics have become now. It allows newsrooms, again, to gather far more cost efficiently. And the other thing is it forces us to up our game, right? Because now, as a reporter, as a producer, you have yet another superb tool in your kit, which you can use, which you can leverage to create far more well-researched, hopefully better produced and faster content, right? And so to my mind, this is something that could really help news reach sort of a new peak on all those fronts.
So I know you're already talking about what Frammer does, but let's try and simplify it for our audience.
Yes.
What exactly does Frammer do and what is the bridge that you're really gapping?
Sure. So what Frammer does, Sonakshi, is it takes any content and makes it completely digital-driven, right? So I'll give you a simple explanation for how it does that. It first of all transcribes a video. It provides captions, which now nobody watches videos anymore without requiring captions on them, right? So it automatically generates that. It then is trained to identify the highlights or the most engaging content of a video. So it identifies those, that it creates each one of those as a short form video with the required headline, the descriptor, everything that is required to get that video digital ready for a particular platform. And it provides unique content for every social media platform. So, including TikTok and Instagram and YouTube Shorts. And then it takes content which is in landscape mode and flips it into portrait, right? So basically when we say that it's doing everything to get a video digital ready, what it is doing is combining 7 or 8 highly complex processes, which currently require multiple software at different companies, and it's doing all that within its own little ecosystem.
So then one obvious question would be that then why need an editor? Do we really need an editor in place?
Always need an editor, because our argument at Frammer is that this is not something that is designed to replace human beings or replace reporters or producers. It is designed to do just one thing, which is all the heavy lifting. Humans must be in the loop. So you need one person to upload the video, review it, and then decide whether it's safe to publish. And what does that allow, Sonakshi? What it allows is the user, who is presumably a reporter or a producer, to focus on much more complex and creative, challenging work, right? You no longer have to have a human being devoted to transcribing, an interview and then going through it line by line to look at all the key moments, identify to generate the headlines. They can actually do more complex things, and I explain what that involves. And then just check the content that is produced, make changes as they see fit, because we don't believe that AI can do the work of a news reporter or a news producer. Right? It is designed as something to augment your ability, not replace you. And when I say that it allows the user to do more creative work, one of the fundamental problems that news companies have now is that all that content sounds and reads alike. After all, if there's an election, everybody's going to be covering the prime minister or an opposition leader's rally, right? What can you do to really make your content sing? And if your team is free to look at that and to write things in your house style and to create more content that is specific to your perspective, right? That is what will allow you to have differentiated content and therefore to get traffic that is coming to you, which is really the ultimate goal, isn't it?
Right. So what is also very interesting about this is that your attempt is not here to take over human intelligence, but you're actually, like you said, it's made to augment the process and not replace. So you're not really replacing an editor, you're not really replacing human efficiency here, but you're just making it better. So I think the first intention here really is to cut down, I think, like you said, heavy lifting. Right? As an editor and someone who's also been on the edit table, I know it takes hours to produce one package. So I think Frammer AI really is coming in here into play. Further to that, let's talk about the market now. The digital consumption market, vast. It is so vast. Like, there are people consuming this digital news from where and how, not just on TV screens, on mobile phones, but there are so many avenues. Do you think this appears fragmented? Is this market fragmented? If yes, then if you can help us understand why this is.
So it is an increasingly fragmented market. And one of the main reasons for that is that now everybody trades in video, right? So back in the day, NDTV and other broadcast companies would create video. Newspapers would create text stories, right? Digital websites would create, website versions of stories, right? Now, if you look at any newspaper, whether it is internationally, New York Times, Washington Post, or within India, right, Indian Express, Hindustan Times, whoever, everybody trades in video because the user is able to access video very, very cheaply and very quickly on their phones, right? The reason that it is fragmented is because of what is known as the attention economy, right? We find that attention span is shrinking every year. And when I have time to look at my phone, news content is going to compete with my Insta Reels, which is going to compete with my entertainment news, which is going to compete with brands that are selling me my shoes or my clothes or my makeup, whatever, right? Or my holiday or my air ticket. So ultimately, it's all coming down to the battle of short form video, right? And so what Frammer does, the bridge that it gaps, is it is allowing publishers to generate short form video at quality and at scale, right? So let's say from a half-hour long video, Frammer generates about 25 to 30 short-form packages in 8 minutes. Try and compare that to what we used as recently as a year ago at a major television network, right? So the gap that it bridges is it's not asking a digital video publisher to choose what to run. It's saying we can run everything for you and we will make sure it looks good. And we will make sure that it is of quality. Why? So that you're not spamming the user with just volume for the sake of volume, right? It's quality content.
Right. And of course, if we are talking to you and your team, quality is something that will be at the top of the list. I am witness to that. Speaking of which, what has been the response like to Frammer? I think you have officially launched and you are already in the market. So help us understand what was the response to something like Frammer.
Sure. So, yes, we went commercial in November. We are now working with a couple of major Indian networks, and we are working with some US networks and some in the UK and Australia. During the recent Democratic National Convention, a big US network used us to process the speeches of everybody from Kamala Harris to Biden to Hillary Clinton. So that was a real fun week for us. The response in the beginning was cautious, right? Because companies were concerned about, well, what does introducing AI into a newsroom mean?
Right.
What does it mean for our teams? What does it mean for our workflows? At the back end, how hard is this to integrate? And ultimately, I think there were some concerns about, can AI really be let loose within the ecosystem or the landscape of news, which has highly sensitive, highly nuanced content, which, as you know, the misreporting of anything or the loss of context can create huge sensitivities and huge problems, right? So I think that there were clients who were very tech forward, who understood that whether you want it or not, AI is already in your newsroom, right? Reporters are using ChatGPT. Like I said earlier, it's become an additional source of input, right? Of information, of intel, which has to be corroborated and verified, much as you would, for example, when you were a reporter, if you got a tip off Twitter, you would make sure that it was checked, or if you saw something on Wikipedia, you didn't take it for granted that was accurate. And so I think the smarter networks, in our opinion, were those who said, we fully believe this is something that we're going to have to embrace. We'd like to get into it early and slowly but steadily. so that our teams have enough time to get used to it. And our response to them was terrific. Please don't imagine that this is going to run a mark in your newsroom and take it over. This is something, again, that is designed to help your newsroom, right? Breathe better. One of the reasons, after all, for burnout among networks, right, is the amount of hard grunt work that people have to do. And the frustration used to be, we can't do no more one thing. We can't go out and report as much as we want to, or we can't, get our content out as quickly as we want to because we're caught in doing these other things in between. So I think the response has been terrific. We are also learning, and AI, as you know, gets smarter the more that it is used, right? And so I think the response has been very favorable. We're very blessed to have clients who believe in us. And I think the interesting thing that we are seeing is that the use case has already expanded so much beyond what you or I think of as conventional media. So not just entertainment content, not just news content, not just sports, but there are corporate brands that produce, video to engage with their customers.
Right.
And they use genuine editorial content to attract customers to their website, and then they will transact with them there if the customer so chooses, right? So we've gained a couple of those. There are a whole array of companies that do lots of webinars and Zooms. As you know, now so much business is done online. And so they want shortened versions of those Zooms to distribute among, all their employees, right? So that's a new market that we just picked up. So I think we're having fun seeing how quickly that user case is expanding while the core technology remains the same.
Looks like it's been a great kickstart for sure.
Yes. Challenge in terms of lots of sleepless nights getting the product right, as is always the case for any startup. But yes, a fun.
But with you overseeing everything and being the driving force, I'm sure that'll all be taken care of. But Suparna, really, you mentioned about how smart AI can get, and which brings me to my question: how smart AI can really get, because it can get dangerous. So let's talk about the boon and bane situation and the concerns, the rising concerns of AI. I also the question comes from a point of view where we see there's war going on currently in the world. And we've seen how the use of AI has really led to misinformation. So let's talk about the concerns of AI as well.
Sure. So, we've talked about some of the benefits of AI. And I think the concerns around AI, there are different levels of them, right? So one concern, of course, is about, how can this be misused on the dark web, or, how can it be used to create horrible scenarios in the hands of the wrong people, right? And there are regulations and policies in place that aim to counter that. I'm not sure that any regulation that is already rolled out can actually address the challenges of AI, because it's changing so fast, and the developments come so quickly, right? But there are, as you know, there's still no consensus internationally on should there be a committee like the one that looks at atomic energy to make sure that AI is safeguarded, right? But let's talk about it in the context that, we're meeting here today, which is what can it mean for the news? So some of the dangers or the concerns, and very rightly so, rest around hallucination. And does AI hallucinate? Absolutely. Are there ways to prevent that? Yes. What is the way to prevent that? Keeping a human in the loop. Right, so we always say, please have a pair of human eyes, look at the content before you publish this stuff, right? But it does learn surprisingly fast. And actually, one of my major concerns with AI, or my criticisms of it, is not the accuracy, because I don't believe it is as accurate as a human being. My bigger concern is around consistency, right? So if it gave me the same incorrect answer 10 times, I would still feel more comfortable, right? It is the fact that 8 out of 10 times the answer could be correct, and then twice it could be completely wrong. And so I think till there is a more consistent response, right? Which, some of the biggest minds and companies in this space, OpenAI and Anthropic and so are all working on, right? But I also believe that if we just waited for that to be perfected, we'll be waiting for a long time, because again, AI learns from the use case, and so it needs to be used at scale in order to be trained faster and better. So the concerns naturally stem around, will it make mistakes? Yes, but do humans not make mistakes?
Right.
And then sometimes users say, oh, but it misspelled, a politician's name, and it shouldn't, absolutely. But you can go into any website or any newspaper and see similar mistakes. So I think also that there is kind of this, it's strange because on one hand, there's this concern about, is AI going to take my job? And then on the other hand, it's like, well, why isn't AI perfect? And the answer is, if it were perfect, it would take your job.
Right.
And so the idea really, again, is for AI to be a tool. Like I said, verify, fact check, and use it much as, you would other sources of input.
Right.
Yeah.
Is it too early to ask what is the roadmap ahead like for Frammer in the next 5 to 10 years? What is your vision? How do you envision yourselves in the Indian market and in the global market?
I definitely would not, hazard a guess about 5 years because, like I said, AI changes so fast. I mean, I would feel silly forecasting because God knows where we'll be with it at that stage. But I think, Sonakshi, if we look over the next 1 year, we should be deployed and working at scale with some of the biggest networks in European languages. So we're already doing trials for Spanish, right? We're looking to get into regional channels in India. And, one hopes that the LLMs for Indian vernacular languages will become much more accurate than they already are. And there's a huge concerted initiative to make that happen, with companies like Sarvam and so on. So we want to work in regional languages. We are going to be serving streamers and creating automatically previews or trailers for the shows you watch on things like Netflix and Hotstar. And definitely going to be creating highlights of matches and other kind of sports, tournaments and so on, which is already being done, not by too many companies.
Well, there's clearly a lot to look forward to from Frammer.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a reason you should shy away from really sharing. But yeah, I'm sure this is a little sneak peek. Suparna, when we talk about global expansion, and like you mentioned, you already you have clients from outside of India. But are you really targeting with investors? How do you plan on really expanding globally? Because AI is not restricted to the Indian subcontinent. It's a global phenomenon. It's an activity almost. So what can you share and talk to us about the global expansion?
Yes, so we are an enterprise solution. We work with other companies. So we're a B2B SaaS company, right? And we make in India, but we make for the world. And the advantages of making in India are that, you can prototype very cost efficiently. Some of the best engineering talent in the world, as you know, is here. And we aim to, create here and then sell internationally, which is what we're doing.
Right.
One of the big focus areas for us is going to be the Middle Eastern market because they are really focusing right now on expanding their media outreach, right? They're also launching lots of big sports leagues and so on. So we're already in talks with potential users there, with potential clients there. And, like I said, definitely looking to get into Spanish very quickly. We have some interest from French and German companies. So the idea is always going to be, to be based here. But, this kind of tech doesn't have any geography restriction, right? And as far as business development goes, we're already focused very heavily on some of these foreign markets.
What sets Frammer apart from its competitors? Is it too soon to ask that already from your contemporaries even?
No, it's something you must ask of us, and it's something that we ask ourselves every day because, it's what we need, to stay ahead of the curve. So one of the things is that this kind of service doesn't exist for premium content, right? So there are tools that are called clipping tools that are available for influencers, for prosumers. But at an enterprise level, like I said at the beginning, what one needs is actually quite a sophisticated and a full stack solution when you can do everything required, like I said, to make a video digital ready in one window. You shouldn't have to toggle between different windows or switch between different software, right? So I think that is what sets us apart. Firstly, that we serve enterprise and not individuals. The second, that it is a full stack solution. Thirdly, and most importantly, I think, is the accuracy, of our output. And a fourth thing that I wanted to mention is that in what we have started out in, which is entertainment and the news media space, there really is no solution like this. In sports, there are companies that have been doing this. There are about 2 of them that have been doing this for a long time and do it very well. And we hope to give them a little bit of competition.
For sure. Last couple of questions before we close this. you have such vast experience in this industry. I have to ask you, in fact, I feel compelled to ask you, with so many trends going on, what is a big no-no when it comes to trends on the digital platform, something that you disapprove of?
I think one thing that really bothers me is when publishers are reluctant to disclose that part of their content, or all of it in some cases, was generated by AI. And it bothers me when I talk to news publishers in India that most readily say that they don't have formal AI policy drafted and communicated to their employees, right? And to me, that's very, very delayed, because, all reporters, all producers are using GPT and other things already. And even, in my sort of previous after at NDTV, I always felt that disclose, right? Be fully transparent.
Yes. Yes.
And I think the other big trend, which I find a bit facetious, is, when some companies have offered buttons where you can say, give me this news as in the form of a Shakespearean sonnet or in the form of a 5-year-old. And I just don't see the point of that, but to each their own. And, the fact that this can all be generated so quickly and cheaply, right?
Yeah.
It's just part outside of AI.
Yeah.
But for me, the bigger concern actually is about how are companies communicating and formulating AI policies and then evolving them, because, like I said, this technology is changing so rapidly. And secondly, how transparent are we really being with our audience about what part of our content is being generated by AI?
Right. Then which is that one trend that you think you approve of, or something that you think will shape the future, a trend maybe in the last couple of years, or something that you see emerging already?
I think the fact that, first it was the ability to shoot on mobile phones, which all of you grew up to, right? And then we saw, in this last election, it was called the first influencer election of India, right? I think the number of people who can now produce content and find a market for it directly and establish that very close relationship, right? I think that it makes the whole process so much more democratic. I do believe that news requires expertise. So, I'm not suggesting that everybody is, a news reporter just because they have a phone and AI, right? But I do think, like I said earlier, Shanakshi, that it should really drive us to deliver better journalism, because now we have this huge new technology that gives us access to a repository of information. And if we're not culling from that and adding that, to our content, then we really are doing ourselves as, content creators and our audience a disservice, because ultimately information and news is a service, right?
Yes.
So you want your product to be as wholesome and as, comprehensive as possible. And now there's no good reason to say, I don't have this research available. I mean, it was always available on the internet, but now it's so specialized and so niche.
Yeah. My last couple of questions, as I really now I will close this. Your assessment of the media industry today, or in the last 1 year, and in your assessment, how do you see it shaping in the next 5 years or so? It's a constantly evolving industry.
It is, and I think that that the news media is up against two things. One is corporatization and conglomeration, consolidation, the 3 C's, right? And it's also always up against revenue pressure, right? And so our motto, as at NDTV, was always use tech to solve a lot of those problems, because if you can automate certain processes, then you can really allocate the bulk of your budget to news gathering and news production, which is what we want to do, right? Which is what we're all here for. And so I think one of the trends is going to be, whether it is by choice or by force, the adaptation of tech in completely new ways. So bear in mind that so far the news media, or the media in general, I won't restrict it to news, has been using software and companies that are, 20 years old, right? Adobe, Avid, right? Braswari, whatever. And now suddenly there are a whole bunch of upstarts that are delivering much more agile technology, right? That can be very quickly and cheaply customized to a network's requirements, which companies that have achieved a certain scale are no longer able to do, right? So I think that what we're going to see is the introduction of new software and new distribution creation technologies, right, in newsrooms and in production rooms all across the world. And that hopefully will really give us a very refreshed new era, right?
And very interesting to actually hear this from you, because you've really seen this industry from so many different lenses, honestly. And this is, you're seeing it from an AI lens right now. Very fresh perspective, I must say, Suparna. My final question, how do you really view a platform like ABIS and shows like ABIS, Asia's Broadcasting and Infotainment Show, for entrepreneurs and industry leaders like yourself?
I think that for startups like us, they are so essential and they bring so many benefits. Among them, obviously, being able to reach an audience and explaining what we do and why and how it might help some of the people that are at that conference, right? The other is to actually learn, because when we come to these events, we hear about what the other side of the table, which in our case is the content generator, the publisher, what is it that they are looking to prioritize? And then we can kind of reset our roadmap and say, oh, well, maybe actually this is the trend that we want to explore ahead of, where we had parked it on our list of priorities, right? So it's a huge way of educating ourselves. It's a huge way of explaining ourselves. And it's also a great way of swapping information with other startups. So at events like this, what often happens is we, run into people who set up companies that operate in adjacent spaces. And the fun thing is to say, hey, how can we collaborate so that we're not trying to replicate what you're doing? Can we integrate in some way? So if you have customers that are looking for what we do, we can work together, or vice versa. And so at each of those three tiers, right? The bonuses of being at these events, when they're as well organized and as well conceived of as this one, are tremendous.
Thank you so much, Suparna. I hope to really see you at the show. We will be seeing you at Asia's Broadcasting and Infotainment Show. But I have to take a moment to really thank you for also making this another learning experience for me, as it always has been with you. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.